Avowed is a video game that I originally had no hopes for, and then I started having some hopes when I found out that this game takes place in Pillars of Eternity universe. And Obsidian's track record isn't bad, so we had KOTOR 2, New Vegas, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, and Outer Worlds, so everyone thought that we can expect a fairly decent game. At least if you avoided social media and you didn't see art director meltdown. It still doesn't matter because it doesn't doom the game, and a lot of creative people are not in their right mind. Look at Stephen King for an example. But this review is going to focus on the game itself without going into things that were said by the creators outside of the video game. And Avowed also doesn't have it easy, because not only the game is going to be compared to Oblivion and Skyrim, which is completely different games, but it also is a RPG game which released in the same month as Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, and soon there's going to be also Monster Hunter Wilds. So it does feel a bit like someone is trying to squeeze this game in the middle of the huge releases, so it's going to be shipped out and people will try it on Game Pass and quickly forget that it ever existed. The development of this game was also rocky. The game itself was announced as grim, dark in the first trailer, and where you could feel like it has something that fits. What you could feel that vibes of it fit something like Pillars of Eternity universe, and some also mentioned Elden Ring vibes, and yes, you could feel those vibes in this trailer. And it was supposed to be an online video game, believe it or not, but Obsidian scrapped that and went full on embracing single player RPG game, and in the process they made the game colorful, happy-go-lucky, with all sorts of wacky looking characters like this blue fish dude or this pirate software. Thor, is this you? But they packed it full of funny quips, sexual innuendos, and made it stiff. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the game's world is stiff. Nobody moves around except for the lady that's sweeping the same spot every night and day, and you can literally pass through that lady because she's not a solid object in the game, unlike other NPCs that just stand around and don't move. But despite of the fact that the game is stiff, you can't pick any objects, you can't really destroy much stuff, only certain crates that the game allows you to, and also, as nobody is moving and nobody is reacting to anything that is happening around and what you're doing, you also can't just attack any NPCs that you don't go out to and have a conversation with and choose fight, attack, or something like that. Multiple times in the game there was a situation when I had an NPC that annoyed me or did something that I didn't like personally, and I would genuinely just go at him, but I couldn't because the game doesn't allow you to do so. You have no freedom in this game. Imagine a game like Gothic from 2001 allowing you to basically kill most of the characters that are not like essential for the story progression, and this game doesn't allow you to hit anyone. Despite of everything, I had, like, for the first couple of hours, which is really important, that only first couple of hours, I felt like the game was fine. Nothing groundbreaking, nothing that could ever be able to compete with other RPGs that people know and love, and Obsidian is in this unfortunate position that they were associated with Fallout when they did New Vegas, so that's why everyone is going to try to compare their future games, especially when they are first-person perspective RPG games, into games like Skyrim or Fallout 4 or Fallout 3 and Oblivion. They are never going to escape these comparisons after they made New Vegas, and especially after they made Outer Worlds, which is really similar in some fashion to also this style of RPG like Fallout. So this game was never going to escape these comparisons, unfortunately, but to be fair, it didn't try to be any of those games. So let's start from this. What's the story of this game? It's not really anything that is memorable. You are an envoy sent by the Emperor to the living lands to find a cause of the plague called Dream Scourge, and this plague attacks everything and everyone, makes them lose their minds and basically changes them into the zombies. And there is this first cinematic in the game that kinda portrays this game in more of a grim, dark tone with some body horror elements, but then it turns into happy-go-lucky game. Your ship gets taken down and you start on an island. This island serves as a tutorial to introduce you to the mechanics of the game and get your first weapons. Then you move to the mainland and you can go to the first city called Paradise, and you already get your first companion called Kai, who is voiced by the same actor who was voicing Garrus in Mass Effect games. And Kai is okay. You later get 3 more companions. In total you get 4, and the problem is that dialogues in this game are horrendous. It's not only that it's filled with MCU type one-liners and jokes, but that is not the biggest problem of the game. The exposition is ham-fisted to you with every dialogue that happens in the game, especially when you talk to your companions. I wanted to know more about my companions, so I had to listen to the whole backstory of the history of their land, and nothing that was really interesting, but it should be interesting. It's a Pillars of Eternity universe. It's my companions. I should be interested. And I always go in these types of games to listen to every piece of dialogue that the game allows me to. And it wasn't. At one point when speaking to Kai, I fell asleep for 5 minutes because of how uninteresting and uninspired the dialogue was. And everything was on one emotional note, that there was nothing that would keep your attention to listen to what the characters are saying. Dialogue system with companions is also broken. When you have your conversations with companions in your camp, the companion will say, for an example, that we need to move on, we don't have time, and the game kicks you out of the dialogue, but now nothing's happening. So this happens only to force you into getting into the dialogue again from the beginning. And even if the game doesn't kick you from the dialogue, there are sometimes moments when the conversation will end because companion is going to say, okay, that's all, I don't really want to talk anymore, and the game kicks you out of the conversation. But even without your interaction, it resets the conversation to the point 0 when companion says in the middle of the conversation, oh hi, nice to see you, can I take your moment, which automatically pulls you out of the experience. There are also choices to be made in the game, and technically they matter, but not really. You may go and get 2 or 3 endings for each choice, really, and you get like 3 endings for the story right now, and you get a slideshow what happened in the future based on the decisions you supposedly made in the game, and really only like one decision really matters in this one, in the second one. So you can kill some characters, for an example, but it doesn't really matter. And even if you kill one of the characters, for an example, that I decided to kill because I didn't like this character, nobody acknowledges that they are dead. Everything just happens normally, like they are alive, because they are not present in the game. Even if they would be alive at the point, nobody mentions, hey, we didn't see this character in a while, have you met them? Oh, I saw what you did. Nothing like that is happening. You may even kill the final boss before the end of the game, only to find out that they are alive and you didn't kill them. Which is the shittiest way to make a video game, giving you an illusion of the choice, and it's not even explained how they are alive. They are just alive and you have to accept it. It feels like there is no repercussions for any of your actions, which is even present in the smaller things like side quests. For an example, there's a side quest that drug dealer in Shatterscarp wants you to pick up the package for him, and he is telling you to not tell one of the guys in the town because he's like a sheriff in this town. So first of all, he tells you who specifically you shouldn't tell about the package, even you don't even know who the guy is. Second, even if you take the package and give it to the sheriff and go back to the guy and say, well, you know, I gave your drugs to the sheriff, but by the way, your brother is dead, he will still reward you for the quest. Anyway, doesn't matter that you just ratted him out and gave the drugs to the sheriff kind of guy. No, you still get your reward for the quest. And later in the game, he tries to kill you when you want to pass to the 4th area in the game. And there's this one stupid scene also in the game that still makes no sense as I think about it. You have a prison in the last 4th zone in the game, and they don't like you in this zone. You have no power even as an envoy in this zone. You can go into the jail prison and talk with the guard and the prisoner and tell the guard that the prisoner is going to be behaving fine and to let him go. And she's going to tell you that you can't just walk in and tell her what to do, and she says, okay, prisoner is free to go. Makes no sense. Nothing makes sense in this game. Everything is just messed up. And there are interesting things in this game. Like, for an example, some missions are really nice. Like, there's this one mission when you have to avoid traps or you have to defuse them, and it actually is really well constructed. The other mission when you have to try to catch up with the murderer that you are actually chasing. Those missions are great as a standalone missions, and there are also missions when you have like a side quests, when I was actually really interested in what is going to happen and how the things are going to conclude. But later in the game there is less and less interesting missions. It feels like the entire effort was put into the first and maybe a little bit of the second zone of the game, and the rest of the game was an afterthought. And as I mentioned, the quest where you have to avoid traps, the main quest, it happens in the 3rd zone. But then when you look closely, a lot of the quests and side quests, what you're doing actually is based upon you avoiding and defusing traps. It feels like a one big copy paste. And even though the main quest was interesting, when you put it all together and you complete a bunch of side quests from this region, you're going to see that they used it to the maximum. And Avowed also is not an open world game. I mentioned zone. It's an open zone game. You get 4 zones which you get to explore, and they unlock as you progress through the main story. Each of the zones you can explore, and there is a lot of loot to find out. There are some great parts of the exploration that are kind of fulfilling, but overall these maps kind of feel small, and even though they tried to go for like a different looks for every single one of the maps, they failed miserably. First section is a dawn shore, colorful area, foresty. You have your first town called Paradise, which vibe of the entire map doesn't fit the universe at all in the first place. Why? Because Pillars of Eternity is a dark fantasy, and this feels like a Pixar type of movie. Second one is Emerald Stair, which is another foresty area, but this one has a bit darker color tones, because this is a land when animancers use corpses to do their jobs and they kind of mess up with the dead. So it feels like the art department was actually like, oh, this is like kind of dealing with corpses, so we should actually make it a little bit darker. And overall there's not really any huge differences between those two areas that would be ingrained in your memory when you finished it. They kind of look the same. The most difference is basically corpses and color palette. And the third region is called Shatterscarp. It's a rocky desert, and it's as fascinating as rocky deserts tend to be. Not really. So the fourth place, called Galavine Tusks, is basically the same type of thing. It's just a rocky volcanic wasteland, which literally feels like a fast reskin of Shatterscarp. The same type of terrain, basically. All of these lands, you will be battling the same type of enemies. Zoribs, spiders, spirits, skeletons, beetles, bears. Everyone in this fucking game has a bear. Every single human fraction that you're going to be fighting tends to have a fucking bear at their disposal. It's comical. Point is, all of these areas share the same enemies. Even if the mushroom dudes that appear in the first location plenty of times, and they appear rarely in, for an example, third location, you will still fight them in this third location. They don't change. And and they have more fancy names for an example, spiders, and treat them as different enemy types because this is this kind of spider and this is this kind of spider. All of those spiders are still spiders. They look the same, they behave the same, and like 90% of them actually inject poison into you. Except one thing that changes is maybe color of the spiders. That's it. And sometimes that's not even the case. So throughout the entire game you're fighting the same types of enemies over and over again, and even special enemies like mini bosses, I would call them, are not special. You have special enemies on the map during certain missions, usually are ties to bounties that you collect, and you have Big Zorib, Bear, Big Spider, Captain of the crew who falls faster than light, and everything feels reused to its maximum. Even in one of the last missions in the game, you have bigger enemies placed on your path, and one of those mini bosses that you encounter on your path is a reskin of the boss that, if you picked right choices, you could have fought in the previous mission. And even as I was enjoying the game on the beginning, it quickly made me tired and I didn't really want to play it anymore because it was boring and it was repetitive. And as I usually prefer fighting with a regular single-handed sword in the games like RPGs, I didn't really have much of a choice if it comes to weapons, because you have one sword that you can upgrade or you can just buy the new one, but this is the same type of sword that you get when you upgrade your old one. There's one type of sword and you get it to the level 2, 3, 4, whatever. You can upgrade the sword if you have materials, you can buy it if you have gold and you don't have materials, but those are ultimately the same swords, just with better stats. There is one sword that you can obtain in Tusks at the 4th area, which I didn't use because I couldn't upgrade it because I didn't have the material to upgrade it, and it was weaker than my sword that I was using at the time, so I was like, okay, I'm not gonna run around and grind the materials to upgrade the sword. There's also one named sword, which is basically the same type of sword. It has some special attributes to it, but as I was actually playing with this sword, I didn't really feel like these attributes give me something. And all of these swords, they have kinda the same stats if it comes to damage. And you have also double-handed sword too, hammer, axe, whatever. You have pistol, but those are the same types of things. You buy the new one or you level up the one that you have, and that's it. You also have pistols, which you can use as a one-handed weapon in your second hand when you have a one-handed sword, and this is kind of the build that I was playing throughout the entire game. You can enhance your weapons, and this is kind of useful, and it's useful to have, for an example, pistol that has electricity attached to it, because the game also introduces locks that you have to zap to open the doors. So if you have the pistol with electricity attached to it, you can shoot the lock and the doors are going to open, and you will not have to waste any mana for it. And yes, there is magic in this game too, and you can go full on magic build, but I found it really not interesting, and I only used it maybe 5 times when it was required of me, and twice or maybe 3 times during the fights to freeze an enemy, because then when you slam into the enemy, and this is like a lower tier enemy, you can actually end it with a 1 hit. And what I mean by 1 hit, well, you have special abilities that you can unlock during the game, and one of the most useful ones is the one that allows you to charge at the enemy, and they kind of renew really fast, so you can slam into the enemy, dealing them significant damage, and it's going to also push them further into staggering the boss or the regular enemy. You can stagger regular enemies, and basically when you stagger them, this is going to allow you to deal them significantly higher damage. Or you can also use it to fly through wider gaps. And you can also upgrade your wand and upgrade your grimoire. Also, the dumbest thing in the game, which I personally hate it when any games do it. I love playing as Archer in the RPG games, and I hate when the modern games do it, because it's just like Diablo 3. Made it dumb as hell. Here, Avowed is doing the same shit all over again. Infinite arrows, Don't worry about arrows. Shoot a bow only takes your stamina. Don't worry about resources in an RPG fucking game. This is how brain dead the game is. Same goes for pistol. You can use a pistol that you equip and it doesn't have limited ammo. It only takes, wait for it, your stamina, which makes no fucking sense. Shooting a pistol takes your stamina. You can charge shooting a pistol like you're shooting a bow, and it takes more of your stamina. I don't know who made it, but this is the dumbest thing I've seen in a video game in a while. And at least they didn't do the same thing with potions, because like you have to actually buy and grind potions to have them at your disposal, which is really stupid system because you can buy from a single seller only 4 or 5 potions, healing potions. Then if you want to have more, you have to go out, die, respawn, and then go back to the seller and you can buy more potions. Just remember to save the game state before you die, and it doesn't matter that you saved after you bought the potions. You can just go back to the seller and he's going to be able to sell you more potions. This is the stupidest thing that I've seen in a while, but you will not have to care about potions when you get your third companion, because your third companion has an ability to heal, and then she's going to be just able to heal you every 60 seconds, which makes potions are obsolete. And the whole game you are fighting the enemies with the same weapons, and to make it more fun, I guess they kinda introduced ability to dash, which I played on an Xbox, and I didn't have an ability to dash forward because some absolute clown decided that dash and jump are going to be under the same button on the controller, and it often led to dashing off the platform and dying when I was trying to jump to the side, as well as inability to dodge attacks forward. When I was running forward, for an example, and I saw the enemy that's shooting me from the side, I could not dash forward. I had to take a hit or slow myself and dash backwards into the enemies that maybe were chasing me at the time. The difficulty scaling in this game is also ass. Most of the time when you have a appropriate level of gear, you are set and every enemy is easy to defeat. To make the game harder in some way, developers decided to spam as many enemies as they possibly could, so you get swarmed and squeezed into some corner on the map and you can't move, with addition of flashy attacks and of this game's damage numbers after each hit. There were moments when I couldn't see shit what was happening on the screen, and at one place they overpopulated the area with the enemies when doing the bounties so badly that I felt my game on Xbox lose frames because console couldn't handle this many enemies on the screen. And at the end, when I finally reached the final points of the game, I was running past enemies if I got the chance to do so. I just couldn't stand fighting the same enemies again and again, spamming the same attacks as I did throughout the entire game at this point, so I just chose to run. The final area in the game adds one new enemy into the mix, which is painful to fight with, so I just couldn't bother with it. But I was fighting the new enemies that they added because it was at least some challenge. And technical state of the game is also abysmal. On PC, this game runs like ass. It's Unreal Engine 5 after all. Stuttering, popping textures, flickering textures, bad frame rate, especially in the city. On Xbox, where I continued my game, it was steady more or less in terms of the frame rate, but in certain areas it would drop visibly to like around 50, maybe 45. Some graphical bugs like flickering texture, especially in the Shadowscape when I entered it for the first time. One side quest was completely unavailable for me. I couldn't talk to the NPC that was supposed to give me this side quest and I couldn't finish it. He was just repeating over and over the same line. Googled it and turns out that, well, a lot of people had the same bug, and this bug may be addressed in most recent patch. And this was my first first encounter with a ladder in the game, and I could not just climb it normally. I had to basically force the game, trying over and over until the game allows me to climb it. And this is not the single instance it happened in the game. It happened like 2 more times when I was playing it. And I was playing personally after the game already had received some patch, because I wasn't paying additionally to play before the official release date. This is why this review is so late. And supposedly another patch addressing new issues should be issued on the days, so maybe even when I'm releasing this video the patch is going to be out. The AI in the game is also cheeks, like both enemy and companion AI. This is the representation of an AI, for an example, you see on the screen, where he just couldn't get to me. He didn't know that he can just circle around the bonfire. And also, as you can play the game with a pistol or a bow, range weapons, etc., you can genuinely just stand outside of the enemy's reach and shoot them, and they will go towards you, but then you go step backwards, shoot them, and they go backwards. And you can just kill the enemies, sacrificing a bit of your time without any effort. You don't even have to be on the same level that the enemies are. You just can finish every single enemy in some locations just standing outside of their reach and shooting bows or maybe a pistol, because you have infinite ammo, so there is no repercussions for this. The companion AI is also not good, because they sometimes help, but usually they just run in between the enemies and they die, leaving you to do and clean the mess by yourself. The game also is dumbed down to the same point like Dragon Age Veilguard. Every quest has a pointer at the screen at all times, showing you where to go especially, and even if you find unofficial shortcut, the game will leave the quest marker behind you and forces you to go back, because it's not going to acknowledge that you passed through this point, so the quest marker can move forward to the next point when it's going to show you where you're supposed to go. And on Xbox, for some reason, when talking to people, sometimes the animation of the character that I was talking to was like in 10 frames per second. It was really bad. I don't know how you messed this up, but this was something that was happening notoriously. You also have this forced in third-person perspective mode, which is really clunky and looks really badly. And I actually feel sorry for anyone who chose to play this game with a third person on, because it looks and plays way worse than first-person mode. But I know that some people just hate playing from the first-person perspective, so at least they have an option, but this option was just shoehorned in at the last second just to please some section of fanbase. There was no effort put into this third-person perspective. And the character creator is also cheeks. It is completely bland and uninspired. You don't have like even options to modify your body. You only have an option to choose your face, and you always are going to have this dog shit on your face or on your head, and there's at least an option to turn this off and you are not going to see it, but then it kind of disconnects it from the rest of the game, because everyone actually tells you that you are ugly. So there is no way of playing this game normally. You will be kinda always reminded that you should have something ugly on your face. I don't know who thought this is going to be a great idea. Yes, people love to play with mushrooms on their face. What? And overall, I would say this game, when it's going to be fully patched out, it's okay to play for $10. So basically, this is a Game Pass game. You can play it, and if you get bored, you uninstall and forget about its existence. Pillars of Eternity should be a dark fantasy universe, and I don't know what is happening to these devs, and they are like afraid of dark fantasy. From one side, we have overhated, in my opinion, The Last of Us Part 2, where Neil Druckmann goes so far with making it dark, grim and brutal, to the point when even fans of these types of things went like, hold up dude, this is kind of fucked up. And the other devs are just scared of going dark, and they make Dragon Age and Pillars of Eternity universes into candy, rainbows and unicorns, because it has to be suitable to play by everyone, even though the games are rated M for mature. No, motherfucker, it doesn't. It doesn't have to be suitable for everyone. You're making an M-rated game. Dark and brutal stories in merciless worlds make money. Even The Last of Us 2, which got enormous amount of hate for directional choices, made money. Your games don't make money, and you supposedly want to attract as much of the customers as you can. You make the game for everyone, and in the process, you make game for no one. If you don't like dark, brutal fantasy, don't apply for the job to be making one. Avowed receives boring out of 10.